Okay, so we are good to go. Hello guys, welcome to the part 2 of the problem solving session number 2 for this course Analog IC Design. Unfortunately, the recording of the part 2 was completely corrupted and I have to re-record the session, and sorry for the delay in uploading because I was literally very busy all the week. Right, so now let's try to see what we have. Let's try to go into the second part now. So now let's begin with these problems. We were actually identifying the filters just by looking at the circuit, right? And what did we discuss over here was to just check the boundary conditions, that is put s equal to 0 and s equal to infinity and check what kind of response you are getting. So for example, when you put s equal to 0, right, and if you get some particular finite value, right, at the v out, and when you put s equal to infinity, if you get v out to be equal to 0, then you know that this is nothing but the response of the low pass filter. On the opposite side, if I put s equal to 0 and I get a heavy attenuation, and if I put s equal to infinity and get a good value of the v out, right, now I know this is a high pass filter. And if you put s equal to 0 and s equal to infinity and you get heavy attenuation on both these frequencies, right, then you know that this is nothing but a kind of band pass filter response, right. One more response that actually exists is when you put s equal to 0 and s equal to infinity and you get a good amount of finite value at the v out, right, but if you put any frequency in between, right, then what you are going to get is heavy attenuation. Then this is what we call as a band reject filter, right. So now we will try to see all these circuits and just try to differentiate in which of these categories all these circuits fall, right. So if you put s equal to 0 in this circuit, what happens to the inductor? At 0 frequency, inductor acts as a short circuit and the capacitor acts as an open circuit, right. So when you put s equal to 0, this branch is completely shorted. What does this mean? V out is directly shorted to V in, right. And if I put s equal to infinity, what is going to happen? This branch will be completely disconnected. There will not be any path between the V in to V out, right. And at the same time, the capacitor will be acting as a short at a high frequency, so your V out will be basically grounded. So what you got at low frequencies, your V out is V in, and at higher frequencies your V out is 0. So this is nothing but a low pass filter response, right. This question is not asking us to find out the zeros and the poles. We have that particular question in the next few slides, so we will look into that, right. Now at the same time, what you can see over here, this is nothing but your LC circuit, and you know, if you have a LC circuit and if you take the what you can say, if you take the output across the capacitor, you are going to get a transfer function which will be of the low pass filter nature. Now if you come to this particular circuit, what is going to happen over here? If you put s equal to 0, right, this capacitor will act as an open circuit. There will not be any path between the V in and V out. That means these will be disconnected with respect to each other, and at the same time the inductor will act as a short circuit to make V out equal to 0. This is happening at s equal to 0. When you put s equal to infinity, the capacitor acts as a short circuit, the inductor acts as an open circuit, V out is directly shorted to the V in, right, and that is what you are getting at high frequencies. So at higher frequencies your V out is V in, at low frequencies your V out is 0. So this is nothing but the response of a high pass filter, right. Now coming to this particular circuit over here, now if you what do we expect? Again you have L, again you have C, again some kind of resistance over here. So in the series LC circuit, if you take the voltage across the capacitor, you know that the response is going to be low pass filter, and that is what we are going to verify. If you put s equal to 0, then the capacitor will act as an open circuit, the inductor will act as a short circuit. There is a direct short between the V out and V in, right. And what happens at higher frequencies? This acts as an open circuit, so there is no current between V in and V out. The capacitor acts as a short circuit, so your V out is ultimately shorted to the ground. And this is what we are getting at low frequencies. We are getting the output. At higher frequencies, we are getting the zero output. So that is the response of the low pass filter. If you come to this particular slide, right? If you come to this particular circuit, what happens if you put s equal to 0? If you put s equal to 0, then the inductor acts as a short circuit, the capacitor acts as an open circuit, so your V out is actually shorted to the ground. If you put S equal to infinity, now your inductor acts as open circuit, your capacitor acts as a short circuit, again your V out is shorted, right? So at both the lowest and the highest frequencies, you are getting the zero output. So what does this mean? This is nothing but the response of the band pass filter. And very frequently, if you ask me what is the use of this kind of circuit, so if you, when you study the RF course, that is the radio frequency integrated circuits, right? If you refer to the Razavi's book, you will see this kind of tanks being used in the waveform shaping circuits of the power amplifier, right? So if you want to if you want to tune the output at a particular frequency, right? So if you want to reject it, right? So then you tune, you adjust, you put these LC values such that this LC circuit will give you the maximum response around that particular frequency only. So not only you can put one such LC tank, you can put 2 or 3 of them at the output node, and you will get a very good what you can say, very good kind of broadband response. Because if let me just show you what I'm trying to say over here. So if you take multiple band pass filter responses like this, right, what is going to happen? Ultimately you are going to get some kind of a wide band response. So this is what actually I was talking about. So you combine multiple resonances, right? You combine multiple resonances and to create a response which gives you a wide band in nature, right? So this is what I was actually talking about. So just go and refer to the reference, that is RF microelectronics power amplifier chapter, and just see how this circuit is being used over there, right? So now comes the next part where we not only want to identify the filter type, but we also want to check the poles as well as the zeros, right? Let me just quickly check whether the recording is happening or not, or else again I will be in trouble, right? Yeah, so the recording is happening, so we are good to go. So now let's start with the first circuit over here. So now let's try to put S equal to 0 in this circuit. If you put S equal to 0, what is going to happen? This will act as an open circuit, even this is going to act as an open circuit. So there is no connect between the V out and V in, and basically you just have a resistor which is connected to the ground, right? So now, and other end is connected to V out. So what you have in the V out, since there is no current that is going to flow over here, again your V out is going to be 0. But what happens at S equal to infinity? Your capacitor acts as a short circuit, even this is acting as a short circuit. So now one of this path wants the V out to reach towards the V in. This path now wants the V out to reach to 0. So there are two parallel paths which are actually fighting with each other to force V out either to V in or either to 0. Correct? Now how to solve such circuits, right? So now what you have to do is, in such cases, this is becoming like a capacitor divider. See, V out cannot be equal to V in and 0 at the same time, right? Both of these paths are fighting out, so we cannot just create a short circuit on both of them, right? We have to use the principle of the capacitor divider. And where is that resistance gone to? So basically, since at very high frequencies your impedance of the capacitor is very low compared to the impedance offered by this resistor, and you know that the parallel combination means nothing but impedance lower than the lowest, right? So that is why we have ignored this over here. So now this is just become like a capacitor divider, right? So now if you put C equal to 0, then this will become a 0 by 0 form, right? And again, what you can see over here, if you apply L-Hospital rules, this can actually give you a finite answer. Correct? So your V out is actually becoming finite at higher frequencies, and at low frequencies it is 0. So it is nothing but the response of a high pass filter. Now let's try to find out the poles of the circuit, right? So what did I tell you to find the poles of the circuit? Consider this branch as a ZP, consider this branch as a ZS. Now when ZP is equal to minus ZS, this is where your pole occurs. Or one more shortcut technique we have understood is that if you have an arrangement like this, then just short your input to the ground and see the net resistance and the net effective capacitance that is present at this output node. Correct? If you short this V into the ground, this capacitor and this capacitor will come in parallel with each other. This is what I have denoted as CS and CP, right? And you have a RP. So the pole value, if you talk, that is minus 1 upon R effective into C effective. R effective is nothing but your RP. C effective is nothing but your CS plus CP, right? So you got this one pole over here. Now let's try to find out the zeros, correct? Now how to find out the value of zeros? We enforce two conditions. if you put Zp is equal to 0, but at the same time your Zs should not be equal to 0, can this Zp become equal to 0? Only when this capacitor acts as a short circuit, the Zp can become 0. When does this happen? Only at infinite frequencies. We are not interested in the 0 that occurs at infinite frequency, right? Now the next condition is to put Zs equal to infinity. Correct? Can the Zs become equal to infinity? Of course it can become equal to infinity at 0 frequencies, right? But at the same time, is my Zp becoming infinity or not? When you put s equal to 0, this becomes infinity, but you still have Rp over here, right? So you don't get Zp equal to infinity when you have Zs equal to infinity at 0 frequencies, right? So that this is a valid 0 that you have, correct? So we got one pole, we got one 0 for this particular circuit, right? So I hope this particular part is very much clear. Now let's try to look into this particular circuit, that is circuit number B. So now again we have to identify the filter type. Again, easily by looking at it, this is nothing but your LC circuit. You can easily figure out that this is nothing but the low pass filter. Again, you can put this test, put s equal to 0, put s equal to infinity, check what is actually happening. You will see that this is the response of the low pass filter. Now how to find out the poles, right? Again, you have to do the same thing. Equate the impedance of this with the negative impedance of this to find the value of pole. The impedance of the series, that is the inductor, is nothing but Ls. For this it is minus 1 upon Sc. What you will be able to find out is that the poles will come out to be and they will lie on the imaginary axis, right? So now let's try to make sense out of it. Let's try to make the sense out of it, right? So now poles, when the poles of any system lie on the imaginary axis, right? So that system will behave as an oscillator, right? What is this? This is a LC tank that you have, correct? And what is the job of the oscillator? Without giving any input, you should get the output, right? So what actually happens, the noise components that are present in the system, so they get filtered out through this tank, and wherever this tank gives you the maximum response, so at this particular frequency 1 upon root LC, the tanks will give you the highest response that is possible, the magnitude response, and you will get that frequency component of that noise getting filtered out by this LC tank, and that is how your oscillator actually works. So when do you want this? So when you are constructing the oscillators, that is voltage controlled oscillator or any kind of oscillator, right? This is where this kind of circuit will come into the picture, and you should understand, appreciate the importance of this circuit. Why is it so important? Right now let's try to find out the values of 0. So how to find the value of 0? In the first condition we enforce Zp equal to 0, but Zp can never be equal to 0 unless and until we reach infinite frequencies. So that condition is completely invalid over here. Now let's enforce this condition, Zs equal to infinity. When can this impedance of the inductor become equal to infinity? Only at a infinite frequency. Again, I am not interested in this, correct? So this circuit only has two poles, that is two poles that are complex conjugate pairs of each other, and they are lying on the imaginary axis, and this circuit does not have any zeros. It's a low pass filter, correct? Now coming to next part, we have just flipped the positions of the capacitor and inductor. Again, if you follow this analysis, put s equal to 0 and s equal to infinity, you will see that this is now acting like a high pass filter, right? Now what about the poles? The poles will exactly occur at the same frequencies because we have just interchanged the position, right? Again, we have to enforce the same condition of Zs equal to minus Zp. So you will be able to see that the poles exactly along the same locations as of that of the previous sum. Now how to find out the zeros? So again we have to enforce the two conditions. Put Zp equal to 0 over here. So can Zp become equal to 0? Of course it can at 0 frequencies, right? But at the same time I don't want my Zs to become equal to 0, right? Or else I will be left with 0 by 0 form. But if I put s equal to 0 over here, I will be getting infinite impedance, and this condition is satisfied. So from this condition I got 1 0 at s equal to 0. Now let's enforce the other condition, that is Zs equal to infinity. Can this Zs become equal to infinity? Of course it can at 0 frequencies, but at the same time I don't want this to become infinity. If I put s equal to 0, this is acting like a short circuit, and this condition is also satisfied, right? So what I can see that again I got a 0 at s equal to 0 over here. So I got two zeros from these two conditions, and what you will be seeing is that this circuit actually has two zeros and two poles, right? So just derive the transfer function, just calculate it with the traditional method. You will see that two zeros exist at s equal to 0 and two poles are there which are complex conjugate pairs of each other. Now let's move on to this next circuit over here. Now what you can see over here, if I put s equal to 0, right, what you can see is that the output will be shorted to the ground, so my output will be 0. If I put s equal to infinity, this part will be disconnected and my v in will be shorted to v out, right? So that is where I will be getting v out equal to v in. So this is nothing but acting as a high pass filter. Now how to find out the poles? So again you have to take the impedance of this part and equate equal to negative of the impedance of this particular part. So for the parallel path, what I have over here is nothing but Rp upon 1 plus SCP into Rp, and for this particular part over here I have Ls. So I just have to equate negative of each other. You will get a quadratic equation, and if you solve this is how you will get the value of poles. And depending on the value of R, L and C, you will be able to see that these poles can actually lie on the negative real axis. They can be act as a complex conjugate of each other, or they can be on the lying on just the imaginary axis, right? So now let's try to see the values of zeros. So now to find the values of zeros, again we have to enforce the same conditions. When you have Zp equal to 0, can the Zp become equal to 0? Of course it can at s equal to 0. Now let me check whether by enforcing s equal to 0 I get Zs equal to 0 or not. If I put s equal to 0, the capacitor acts as open circuit and this resistance will have some finite impedance. So I won't be getting Zs equal to 0. So this condition is actually getting satisfied. So you have s equal to 0 at s equal to 0. Now coming to the next condition, that is putting Zs equal to infinity. Let's try to see whether we can get this Zs equal to infinity or not. So now what we have seen over here, there are two parallel paths. When can the impedance of this combined become equal to infinity? When the impedance of these two individual paths are negative of each other, right? Once you have that, then this will act as an open circuit, and once this acts as an open circuit, there is no connection between the V in and V out, and once there is no connection between the V in and V out, basically what is actually gonna happen is your V out is just going to be 0 in that particular case, because there is no connection between the output and the input. So now when can that happen? The impedance of this path, that is 1 upon SC, has to be equal to this R, and that is negative of each other. So that is how you get the 0, that is S equal to minus 1 upon RC. Correct? So you have two poles and you have two zeros in this particular circuit. Correct? Now let's try with this particular circuit. If you put S equal to 0, your V in and V out are directly shorted. The capacitor acts as an open circuit, so your V out equal to V. If you put S equal to infinity, your capacitor will act as a short and to the ground, and now your V out will be shorted to the ground. So this is nothing but your low pass filter. Now if I try to find the value of the poles, what I have to do? Again the ZP combination, the impedance has to be equated to the negative of the impedance of the series combination. So what is the impedance of this particular series combination? That is this parallel paths over here. So again you can see it is nothing but the Z1 Z2 upon Z1 plus Z2. So Z1 is R, Z2 is L into S, that is the impedance of the inductor. So this is the impedance that you got. Corresponding to the capacitance, you have 1 upon SCP. So now if you cross multiply, you will be again getting a quadratic equation, and the poles that you will be able to see, those poles will be exactly equal to these poles, because again we have got the same equation. Okay, so again we have got the two poles. Now let's try to find out the values of zeros. Let me enforce this condition, put Zp equal to 0. So can Zp become equal to 0 only at infinite frequency? So that is not the valid condition. Now can this Zs become equal to infinity? Of course this can become equal to infinity when you have the impedance of these two parallel paths that are negative of each other, correct? And when can that happen? When the Ls, that is the negative of this Ls impedance, is equal to R, correct? So this is what you got, and now this pole, the zero that you will be left with is nothing but minus R by L. So the circuit has two poles and one zeros over here, right? Now once that part is completely done, now let's move on to the sensitivity analysis. So what does this sensitivity analysis means? So the sensitivity analysis means that the pole or the zero that is present in this passive or maybe active circuit, right? How sensitive it is towards the variation in the passive component values, right? So this is what the sensitivity analysis means. And why is it so important? So we will look into it, why there is a variation in the values of the passive components that are present over here. We have some slides on it. I will show you in the next slide, right? So now what is the pole frequency? It is nothing but 1 upon RC. Now how to find the change in the pole frequency with respect to the change in the R1? So again we have to do d omega naught upon dr1, assuming that the change is going to be small and not a very large one. Okay, so I have to differentiate the omega naught with respect to the R1. What you will be getting from your class 11 12th, if I try to differentiate this equation, you will be left with minus 1 upon R1 square C1, right? But how do I find the change, right? I mean, the way we express the change in the center frequency is that we express this d omega naught not in the absolute terms, but in the relative terms with respect to omega naught. So how much change is there, how much change I got with respect to my center frequency? This is how we represent the change. The term that I got over here is d omega naught, correct? So I have to find d omega naught by omega naught, correct? So d omega naught value I was able to find from here. Just put dr1 on the RHS, right? And now this equation, if you divide by omega naught, you will be left with this equation. But omega naught I know it is 1 upon R1 C1. So if you put omega naught equal to 1 upon R1 C1, the C1 C1 will get cancelled. R1 will get cancelled with one of the orders of R1, and what you will be left with is d omega naught by omega naught is equal to minus dr1 by R1. So what does this mean? Any change that I do in the R1, right? So what does this mean? If I increase the R1, let's say by 5%, I expect my change in the center frequency to be minus 5%. Now what does this minus 5% actually dictates? It is nothing but it is just showing you that if you increase this quantity, your center, your pole frequency is gonna decrease, and this is very clear from this expression, right? Your omega naught is 1 by R1 C1. So if your R1 actually increases, you should expect that your pole frequency should go down, right? And this is what this negative sign actually indicates. Now coming to why does this sensitivity analysis matter? So what I have done over here, I have just shown you the diffusion resistance, the poly resistance, as well as the N-well resistance that exists in the particular technology node, that is 180 nanometer or 65 nanometer. Now what actually happens, this is the N-well that I wanted to create, right? Or this is the N plus diffusion that I wanted to create. Now what happens, you do the ion implantation to create these islands of N plus regions, right? Now what happens, let's say for this particular N plus region, I wanted a particular concentration of the dopant impurities, right? Let's say 10 to the power 19 per centimeter cube kind of stuff, right? Now what actually happens when you do this, this 10 to the power 19 may have some variation around these edges and all, correct? So you will not get a uniform 10 to the power 19 per centimeter cube kind of dopant concentration. There will be some variation in that, and what will happen because of that variation, so the net conductivity of this entire region is gonna change, and since the net conductivity of this entire region has changed, even the resistance is gonna change over there. Apart from this, what is the other variation? See, these are the materials, right? And what you have studied in your high school physics, each and every material has something called as the coefficient of thermal expansion, right? Now what will happen because of this? So now if you have a particular change in the temperature, if you apply this particular formula, you can see that your resistance is going to be dependent on the temperature, right? And this is the dopant material that you have. So what is the dopant material for the silicon? It's a phosphorus, right? So now you may have, because of the temperature variations that may happen, you will be seeing that because of this expression you will be seeing the change in the resistance, right? And once this process variations means, you can take this example that I just told you, that the concentration may not be uniform along the edges, right? So because of the process and this temperature variations, the value of your resistance that you are trying to implement in that particular technology node may actually change, and that may change the pole frequency of the circuit that we have seen over here. Correct? So that is why this sensitivity analysis actually matters a lot, because if this R variation is around 15-20%, even your pole frequency is going to be varying by 15-20%, and that can have disastrous consequences on the response of your baseband filter that you are gonna implement. Correct. So this is a slide that I have taken from the Razavi's book. You can see that it has mentioned over here that the variations with the process is usually less than plus minus 20%, but this plus minus 20% is not a small number at all. Correct. Now let's try to see one application over here. So they have given an example of a feedback amplifier, and what you can see, it is taking the input of a current and it is converting that current into voltage at its output. Correct. So now such circuit we call as a trans impedance amplifier because it takes current as an input and gives the voltage at the output. Now where do we use this kind of circuits? So you have a servers, you have a data centers, you have multiple server racks, right? And how these server racks are going to be connected with each other. So there will be long optical fiber cables that are going to be connected between them. So whatever signal is going from here to here, it is actually in the form of a light. Correct. Now that light signal has to be converted into the electrical signal first, and then the electrical signal will be processed. Correct. Who is going to convert that light signal into the electrical signal? You have something called as a photodiode. I assume all of you have studied that in your semiconductor course, right? So when you have those photodiodes with you, they will be giving the current as the output. Correct. Now that current I have to process, so that is why the TI, trans impedance amplifier, has been used over here. So you can see over here that the output voltage will be nothing but this I into RF, correct? Not just I into RF, the minus into I into RF, correct? So now what you can see over here, any variation in this RF, correct? Any variation in the value of this RF is going to change my value of V out over here. Correct. Now what I will interpret it as, if there is a change in the RF, right, I may interpret that the change may have occurred in the I in itself, and I may decode that there was some information that was present on the that was sent through the optical fiber, and that information now I am trying to decode over here. This is what you will try to decode, that there was some information and that is why I'm gonna get change in the V out. So that means there was some change in the I in, and that is getting reflected in the V out, but actual culprit is actually your RF, right? So now what is going to happen because of this? So your RF, whatever change is there in the RF, it is gonna get reflected in the V out, and you want to minimize this change as low as possible. So how do we do that? We use some circuit, we use some layout techniques called as the common centroid layout and all. So the resistor, the one big resistor that you have, you divide it into 4 parts and you place it such that any variation that is occurring along the horizontal or the vertical axis, it is gonna get cancelled out. What does this mean, getting cancelled out? So variation over here will get cancelled out, variation over here will get actually cancelled out, right? So that is what you try to create. You try to mimic as if there is not going to be any variation by using some smart layout techniques, right? Now let's try to see another sensitivity analysis problem. So in this problem, you have been you have been given this RL circuit over here. What will be the pole for this circuit? Again, it's going to be very easy. It is going to be coming out to be R1 upon L1. Now let's try to do the sensitivity analysis. Again, I have to do the differentiation of that is omega p with respect to R1 in one case and with respect to L1 in another case. So the d omega p by dr1 will be just nothing but 1 upon L1. But again, as I told you, we are interested in finding the change in the pole frequency with respect to my actual pole frequency. So when you calculate d omega p by omega p, what you have to do, this d omega p has to be substituted as dr1 upon L1. So that is what you are gonna see over here. But omega p itself is R1 by L1. So this L1, when you put R1 upon L1 over here, this L1 and L1 gonna get cancelled and you will be left with only this particular equation. Similarly, if you do it for d omega p by dl1, you will be seeing that you will be getting d omega p by omega p because of the change in the L1 as minus dl1 by L1. Correct? So the net change in the pole frequency because of the changes in the R1 as well as the L1 will be nothing but the summation of both of them, that is equal to dr1 upon R1 minus dl1 upon L1. Now let's try to make an intuitive sense whether this equation makes sense or not. If R1 increases, my pole frequency is going to increase, and this is what this expression represents. The positive change in the R1 is going to increase the pole frequency, and if my L1 increases, my pole frequency is going to decrease. So this is what this equation represents. if your L1 actually increases, your your pole frequencies actually decreases, right? So this is actually making the intuitive sense. Now what the question is asking us, if R1 exhibits a variability of 3%, what is the maximum tolerance of L1, right? So dr1 upon R1 is 3%, and what I want is the pole sensitivity. I don't want it to be more than 5% sensitive. So d omega p upon omega p is 5%. The dr1 upon r1 is 3%. What will be this? Dl1 upon L1. Correct? So we'll be seeing that the dl1 upon L1 will come out to be minus 2%. If I take the absolute magnitude of it, you can say that the change in the L1, that is the tolerance in the L1, it has to be less than 2%, right? And that is a little bit stringent requirement. Correct? Now once the problems on the passive RC filters are done, we will try to move on to the active RC filters now. Correct? Because this is what we usually use. The passive RC filters, you will rarely see them being used heavily in the baseband. I will show you in the application case studies as well how active RC filters are being used everywhere. Correct? So now let's see the op-amp based active filters. So again, what they are asking us to calculate the transfer function and identify the filter type. Correct. So now let's try to calculate the transfer function over here. So now what is this? So this is connected to the inverting terminal. This is acting like a inverting kind of amplifier, right? So now what is the expression for the gain of the inverting amplifier? Minus of Z2 by Z1. What is Z2? Z2 is R. Z1 is 1 upon SC. So what I am left with, the expression between V out upon V in is nothing but minus SCR. Correct? So at zero frequencies, the circuit, the V out will be heavily attenuated. At very high frequencies, I am getting a lot of gain. So it is acting like a high pass filter, and as you can easily identify from your courses on the op-amps, that this is nothing but a differentiator circuit. Again, if you want me to do one more helpful thing, what if I put S equal to 0 over here? Correct? What if I put S equal to 0? This capacitor will act as an open circuit. I will just draw the circuit. That will be much better actually. This is negative, this is positive. Correct? I just have a feedback resistor over here between the negative terminal and the output, and this is connected to the ground. So now you can see, since this is a heavy negative feedback and op-amp is ideal, even this is going to be get grounded. So my V out will be equal to 0. Now if I put S equal to infinity, what I'm gonna get? Let me just draw the circuit quickly. Right? So I will of course be having this feedback resistor, but along with that, my input, since this capacitor will act as a short circuit now, this is my V in over here. Correct? This is my V. So now what you can see in this particular case, that at very high frequencies, what you are gonna have over here is that your V out is just directly shorted to V. Correct? And this is what we are also going to, and this is what we are also seeing, that your output was basically at higher frequencies, your gain of the circuit was actually very higher. And you can see also from over here that at S equal to 0 you got V out to be 0, and S equal to infinity you are getting some finite output, right? So what does this mean? This circuit is now acting like a high pass filter. Correct? Now this circuit is now basically acting as a high pass filter. So now let's try to look into the next circuit over here. Yeah, correct. And similarly, again the similar exercise you can do. You will be able to find that the transfer function will be nothing but 1 upon SCR. And for this particular thing, at very low frequencies, you are gonna get a very high gain. Correct? You are going to get a very high gain, and at very low frequencies. Correct? At very low frequencies, what you will be able to find out is that your output will be heavily attenuated. Correct? So you can see also here at very high frequencies, this capacitor will act as a short circuit, and this attenuation, since this positive terminal is at the ground, so now this ground will be reflected over here because of the virtual ground concept, and you will be getting output which is very close to 0. Correct? So this act as a low pass filter. Now if you come to a little bit complicated version of the previous circuit, what you will be able to see over here is that again you have to do minus Z2 by Z1. Correct? This is nothing but the parallel combination of the R and C. So this is what I have written over here, R2 upon 1 plus SCR2. So minus Z2 by Z1, your Z1 is just R. So your transfer function will be left to only this particular equation over here. Correct? Again, if you want to do the sanity check, At very high frequencies, the capacitor will act as a short circuit. So because of the virtual ground principle, your ground voltage will be reflected over here, and that ground voltage will be reflected at the Vout. Correct? And at very low frequencies, the capacitor acts as open circuit, and you will be just left with the inverter and inverting amplifier configuration. If you put S equal to 0 over here, this is nothing but the gain of the inverting amplifier. Correct? Now coming to what is the advantage of using this particular circuit with respect to the passive RC circuit, right? Both of them are giving me the low pass filter response. So now what I am doing, I am just connecting a load capacitor over here that may be coming, because who will be giving this load capacitance? So you have to first think, where do we use these circuits, right? So we use these circuits at the baseband, and these circuits will be driving the analog to digital converter. So the input capacitance of the analog to digital converter will be nothing but the load for these filters, right? So now this CL you can think as the input capacitance of analog to digital converter. Now what will be the transfer function of this? You can clearly see that my pole will be modified now, because the net C at the Vout node has changed from C1 to C1 plus CL, and this is what you can see over here. So what you can see, by putting some load over here, the cutoff frequency of your passive filter actually changes. So your passive filter is highly susceptible to what we call as a loading effect. But if you look at this filter, let me put capacitor CL over here, and just for the sake of giving you a confidence, I'm going to solve the transfer function of this by using the KCL or KVL and not by using any shortcut method, right? So now what I'm doing, I'm applying a KCL over here, right? The nodal analysis at this particular node. So now if you look, 0 minus Vi upon R1 plus 0 minus V0 upon R2 plus 0 minus V0 upon 1 upon SC, that has to be equal to 0, correct? And once you solve this, what you are going to get, again you are going to get the same expression. You can see that in this equation there is no role for this particular CL. What we can see is that the cutoff frequency of the active filter, despite getting loaded by the analog to digital converter, has not changed over here, but in case of the passive filter, it has actually been changed, right? So this is one of the massive advantage of the active filter that you will get over the passive filter. Correct? I hope that part is clear. Now let's try to calculate the transfer function of this type of filter over here. Again, you have to do minus Z2 by Z1. I will leave this as an exercise for you, and you will be getting this particular transfer function. What I will be doing is, we will be doing some sanity check, right? And this is what we do. So let me just change the color of my pen. Just give me a second. Yeah. So now what happens if I put S equal to 0? If I put S equal to 0, this capacitor will act as an open circuit. There is absolutely no connect between the input voltage and the output voltage. So your Vout will be by default 0. Correct? What happens at S equal to infinity? This capacitor will be shorted, right? And what you got is nothing but the inverting amplifier, and this is what is represented over here. Correct? At high frequencies I am getting a gain, at low frequencies I am not getting the gain. This is the characteristics of the high pass filter. Right? Now let's try to see whether this is a response of the high pass filter or not. If I put S equal to infinity, what I am gonna get? You will be just left with minus C1 R2 upon C1 R1. That is equal to minus R2 by R1, and this is what we are also getting over here. Correct? If you put S equal to 0, what you will be getting, H of S will just become equal to 0, and this is what you are also getting over here. Right? So this expression is actually making sense. Now coming to this particular circuit, again you can actually calculate this minus Z2 upon Z1, which I have done over here. This is your Z2, the parallel combination of the resistor and capacitor, and the Z1 is nothing but the series combination of R1 and C1. Correct? If you do this, you will be left with this particular equation over here. But again, we just want to make some sanity check. What happens if I put S equal to 0? If you put S equal to 0, this acts as an open circuit. Again, this acts as an open circuit. If this acts as an open circuit, again there is no connect between the Vi and Vo. This path is now open circuited. Correct? So I expect my Vout to be equal to 0. If I put S equal to infinity, this capacitor will act as a short circuit. Even this is gonna act as a short circuit. Correct? And what I'm gonna get, since this is now, let me draw a circuit for S equal to infinity. That will actually explain it in a much better manner. This is connected to the ground. Since C2 is short circuited, correct? This is how my Vout will look now. And I'm not drawing R2 because this is already a short circuit. Now, what is the sense of drawing R2 over here? Correct? So now I have to draw R1. Correct? And this is my Vin. Correct? So what you can see over here, since there is a heavy negative feedback, I can apply the principle of virtual ground because this is the ideal op-amp. So this node will be actually grounded. And what you can see, this node is actually connected to Vout. So your Vout is over. So your Vout for S equal to infinity case is also 0. So what you can see, at S equal to 0, you got Vo equal to 0. At S equal to infinity, you got Vo equal to 0. So this is nothing but the response of the band pass filter. Correct? So we have seen how to implement high pass filter, band pass filter, low pass filter in the using the active components, right? Now let's try to see the response of this circuit, right? This is a little bit tricky. Now what happens at S equal to 0? We are first just trying to get an intuitive sense what this circuit is actually doing up. At S equal to 0, you can just open circuit the capacitors. So now your circuit will just look like, let me just draw it quickly. I have R1 and this is my Vin. This is how your circuit will look like, right? So if I just ask you what is the gain of this circuit, this is nothing but minus R2 by R1. And this is what you are gonna get over here. If you put S equal to infinity, what is going to happen? These capacitors will actually act like a short circuit, right? So now if you just short circuit them over here, correct? If you just short circuit them, one of the nodes, right? Because there is a heavy negative feedback, right? Because of the virtual ground, this path, right, is actually trying to bring V out towards the ground, and this particular path, right, because this is a short circuit, right? Now one path is wanna bring V out to ground, and this particular path wanna bring V out to V in, right? And what we have seen, whenever there is a fight to bring a particular node to two different values, you just cannot create short circuit over here. You have to consider these capacitors into account, right? And that is why we cannot just short circuit it, because one path will just bring V out to 0, another will just bring V out to V in, correct? So now what we have to do, we have to actually consider these capacitors despite the fact that their impedance is very low. Correct? Now what is this? This is again an inverting amplifier. So what will be Z2 by Z1? So it will be nothing but 1 upon SC2 upon 1 upon SC1. Correct? That is why you got C1 by C2 factor over here. At low frequencies, I am getting R2 by R1. At higher frequencies, I am getting C1 by C2. Correct? Now it will depend on the values of this R2, R1, C1, C2 to see how the response will actually shape up. Right? Now this was just the intuitive understanding that we got. Now when you try to calculate the actual transfer function, you have to take the parallel combination of this and the parallel combination of this. What is the parallel combination of this? Minus R2 upon 1 plus SC2 R2. Parallel combination of this is nothing but R1 upon 1 plus SC1 R1. So now what will be the final response that we will be getting? It will be this. Let's do the sanity check. S equal to 0, the answer should be R2 by R1. Correct? And this is what I got from here. It should be R2 by R1. Correct? Now at S equal to infinity, the answer should be what? I have got C1 by C2 over here. What if I put S equal to infinity? Use the L'Hopital rule, right? You will just get C1 upon R1 upon C2 into R2. Correct? So now the answer, obviously at the same time you have the R2 by R1 at the outside. So this R2, R1 will get cancelled, and you will be just left with C1 by C2. So this expression definitely makes sense. We have verified it with the sanity check as well. So now let's try to plot the response of this. Correct? Let's try to plot the response of this. Correct? So now, as I told you, depending on the conditions on C1, R1, C2, R2, the position of the 0 and the pole will actually interchange, right? So in the first particular case, I am assuming that my R1 C1 is less than R2 C2. What is my 0 frequency? It is 1 upon R1 C1, and pole frequency is 1 upon R2 C2. So if R1 C1 is less than R2 C2, you can see that the 0 will be lying higher than the pole, and this is what I have shown over here. Correct? The 0 will be lying higher than the pole. At 0 frequencies, my gain was what? R2 by R1. So I have to start with the R2 by R1. I will go flat till I hit my pole. Then I will start to roll off with 20 dB per decade. The moment the zero hits, my roll off will actually get flattened out, and at higher frequencies, my gain is what? C1 by C2. On the contrary side, if my R1 C1 is greater than R2 C2, what will happen is my zero will actually lie first and my pole will lie second. Correct? So now what is the gain that you have seen at the DC? It is nothing but R2 by R1. So that will be flat till 0. After that, it will start to increase with plus 20 dB per decade kind of slow. Once you hit the pole, it will get flattened out. And at higher frequency, what is my gain? It is nothing but C1 by C2. Correct? I hope this particular thing is clear. So the way what will be the response? The response now actually depends on the component values. Correct? I hope that part is clear. So now let's try to do a very interesting study over here. And now we will be, let me just change the color of my pen. Yeah, so now we'll be looking at this particular filter. Correct? So now let's try to see what actually happens at s equal to 0. If I put s equal to 0, what is going to happen? So this particular node that you're seeing over here, so the capacitor over here will act as an open circuit, and even the capacitor over here will act as an open circuit. So this feedback that you are seeing over here, that was present over here, this feedback will be gone. Even this particular branch, even that will be gone. So you'll be left with only this. But just a minute, something just happened. Just give me a second, guys. Yeah. So now what you will be just left with this particular circuit over here. There is a strong negative feedback over here. Can any current flow over here? Obviously not. So this is my Vin. So your Vin will be ultimately shorted to V out over here through the principle of virtual ground. So at s equal to 0, you are getting V out equal to Vin. At s equal to infinity, what is going to happen? This is just going to get shorted to the ground over here, and this feedback will be very strong now. Correct? So now what you are seeing over here, there is some kind of positive feedback over here and there is some kind of negative feedback over here. Correct? Now let's try to see which one dominates. See, obviously you can see that this is directly shorted. This feedback should be ideally very strong, but still let's try to test. Let's say I gave a test voltage over here, right? I gave a test voltage, and so now what I want to do, I want to calculate how much portion of this V test comes over here. Correct? Is there going to be any portion of the V test that is going to be coming up over here? Guys, this node is shorted to the ground. Anything that I do over here, it does not care, because this node is directly shorted to the ground now. So Vp will always be equal to 0. Any feedback, any change that I will be giving over here, it will not be reflecting over here. So this feedback is extremely weak. Though it is looking like there is a complete short from the output towards this particular input, just note that there is a short that is present at this particular node towards the ground. So any change that I will be applying over here, it will not be getting reflected over here. So this feedback is extremely weak. This feedback is extremely weak. On the other side, if I do any change on the Vout, that will be exactly replicated on this negative side. Correct? So the net feedback is still negative, and that's why I can easily apply the virtual short principle. So now if I am able to apply the virtual short principle, what is the voltage at Vp? It is 0. So that 0 will be reflected over here and my Vout will be shorted to ground. Correct? So at low frequencies your Vout was V, at higher frequencies your Vout is 0. So that means your response would be looking something like this. Correct? Or if it is a second order circuit, I am not very sure. It may look something like this. Some kind of peaking will also be there. Correct? So now, why did we choose this topology? Why did I take this sum? This is something called, this topology is called as the Salenki filter. Correct? Just search this on the internet. Maybe you can put this as a question to the chat GPT. You can search on the YouTube or go to the Razavi's Fundamentals of Microelectronics book and study about this Salenki filter. My job was to just give you an intuition and just to get you started of how can you actually start to analyze these circuits, right? We are not going to go very detailed about the filters in this particular course, right? There exists different courses on the internet. You can refer to Shanti Pawan sir's course on the active filters if you want to study these circuits in detail. My job is to just give you a little bit flavor of what this circuit is actually doing and why are we using it, right? So once this circuit is done, now let's try to understand another circuit over here. Correct? So this is one more topology. Now let's try to see what happens at s equal to 0. At s equal to 0, I have to open circuit this, right? Again note that there is not going to be any connect between the input and the output over here. correct? Again this path is going to be getting disconnected. What is the use of the feedback? This feedback is now connected to the floating terminals, so this feedback is also completely wasted now, because none of the part of the output is gonna get reflected over here because of the open circuit that I'm gonna get because of the C2 and C1, since I'm operating at a very low frequencies, right? Now if you draw the next circuit, so you will be just left with this R2, correct, and you will be left with this op amp and the RB and RA, correct. What you can see over here, what is the voltage over here, correct? You can see this is a negative feedback. What is the voltage over here, guys? Zero current is flowing over here, since this is shorted to ground. Again this is shorted to ground over here, correct? This is 0. So if this is 0, that means even this is going to be 0. So if this is 0, what does this mean? VO into RA upon RA plus RB has to be equal to 0, correct? So what does this mean? Your Vout will be 0. So what did we see is that at the low frequencies your Vout is actually 0. Now let's try to get this circuit at high frequency, that is at S equal to infinity. Now at S equal to infinity, this is going to be shorted, even this is going to be shorted over here, correct? So now let's try to draw the circuit. So you can see there was a capacitor which was shorted now, there was a capacitor which was shorted now. You have this feedback from Vout to the positive terminal, correct? This is what I have drawn over here. You have R2 and you have a negative feedback. Now what you can see over here, there are two feedbacks that are present in this circuit. So now we have to apply a test voltage and try to see what is the feedback that is coming onto the Vp and the Vn. So now how much portion of this Vtest will be coming back to this node Vp? So it will be nothing but the resistive division between this R2 and R1, right? So this is what I have drawn over here. So the portion that will be coming back to the Vp will be nothing but R2 upon R1 plus R2. Similarly, the portion of the Vtest that will be coming back to this negative node will be nothing but Ra upon Ra plus Rb, right? Now if I want this circuit to have the negative feedback, right, I don't want to create an oscillator. This is a filter, right, that we are trying to design. So now what condition should I impose? So this Ra upon Ra plus Rb, right, it should be much higher, or it should be a little bit higher, at least little bit higher than R2 upon R1 plus R2, and this is the condition that we have actually enforced over here. Once and only once you enforce this condition, you can apply the principle of virtual ground. And if you apply the principle of virtual ground, then what is this node become equal to? This is V in first, right? And now after applying the virtual ground, this V in will be replicated over here, correct? And now V out into Ra upon Ra plus Rb, which is exactly equal to this voltage, this you have to equate to V in, and your V out will be nothing but 1 plus Rb by Ra into V in. What does this expression represent? This is a gain of a non-inverting amplifier, right? Since the negative feedback has won now compared to the positive feedback, so V in you are applying to the positive terminal, you have some kind of feedback arrangement over here that exactly resembles the non-inverting amplifier, and no wonder why we are getting the same expression over here, correct? So what does this mean? At S equal to 0, my Vout was 0. At S equal to infinity, my Vout is some sort of maybe gain times V in, correct? So this is nothing but a response of a high pass filter, correct? I hope that particular part is clear. Now let's try to understand a very interesting circuit, and this circuit is called as Tau Thomas biquad, and you will be able to see this circuits in one of our application case studies, right? So now let's try to visualize this circuit at S equal to 0. What is going to happen at S equal to 0? This capacitor will be open circuited, even this capacitor is going to be open circuited. So the circuit that I will be left with is just this particular part, right? Now one thing that we have to do is see where is the Vout taken. Vout is not here. Vout, if you look, the Vout for this particular circuit is actually taken here, and your Vn is actually over here, correct? And now one interesting thing about this circuit is if you take the output over here, the response changes. If you take the output over here, the response will be little bit different, correct? The nature of the response actually changes. So now let's try to see and let's try to work out at S equal to 0 what my Vout will be, correct? So now if I try to see what my Vout is going to be, so there can be two things that can be done over here, correct? So one thing that we can do is let's try to check whether this circuit is in the negative feedback or not, because this is what we would like to do. So if I try to increase this node over here, the disturbance, correct? If I increase this, since this is a negative sign, this this disturbance should be decreased over here. Now the decreased disturbance will appear over here, correct? That decreased disturbance will now get feedback to where? Since this decrease, since I'm doing is I'm actually decreasing this particular node, and this decrease is actually where it is on the negative terminal of the op amp, correct? Now since this is on the negative terminal, at the output I will be getting a increased disturbance over here, correct? And once this terminal, once this is a increased, since this is also increased disturbance and that too on the negative terminal, now this disturbance will be decreased over here. So what you can see is that the entire system is beautifully placed in the negative feedback, correct? So though you are not able to see a local negative feedback across this, you can still apply a virtual ground principle over here because there is a good negative feedback. Since I can apply a virtual ground principle, since this is connected to the ground, even this node will be connected to the ground, and since there is no current that is flowing over here, why? Because there does not exist any current into the input terminal of the ideal op amp. Since there has to be zero current flowing through this, then your V out minus 0 upon R2 has to be equal to 0. This dictates that the V out to be equal to 0. Correct? I hope that particular part is clear. Now when you move to s equal to infinity, what you can do? See, when you do s equal to infinity, this is acting as a short circuit, even this is acting as a short circuit, right? So the next circuit will look something like this. Correct? The next circuit will look something like this. And now what we can do is you can readily apply a virtual ground over here also, correct? So since you can readily easily apply the virtual ground over here, and the moment you apply virtual ground, this node became equal to 0, this node became equal to 0 directly. So again you have a V out equal to 0. So the response that you got is basically was 0 at s equal to 0, 0 at s equal to infinity. So you beautifully got a band pass filter response, and this circuit was called as what? Tau Thomas bicquad. Correct? I hope till this point it is very much clear. Now let's try to understand the some points with respect to active versus passive filter. See, when you are trying to design the higher order passive filters, right, you don't literally have any control on the magnitude, that is the amplitude response. Why am I telling you that? See, if you look at this particular circuit, you have a gain from the op amp, right? You have the gain from this op amp as well. So if you look at the transfer function, a very detailed transfer function V out upon V in of this Tau Thomas bicquad, you can see that you have some kind of amplitude response control under your hand, right? You have that kind of tuning, the way you can actually shape the magnitude response, but that kind of shaping option is not available when you just try to cascade the passive RC filters one by one, correct? So that is what I was telling you, that if you try to cascade the filters like this, on the for the active filter side you have some control and you can get a sharp response like this, correct? But when you do it for the passive filters, you may get a very sluggish response, wide band but very low Q response, correct? So this is what I have written over here. If you try to cascade the passive filters, that is to design a higher order filter, you are gonna get a very low Q, correct? And for the communication applications, this is not at all desired, right? As we will see in the application case studies. Now, as we have seen the passive filters, the cutoff frequencies is highly susceptible to the load, the capacitance that they present. But for the active filter, that was not the case, right? Now, for the passive filters, the loss actually increases, right? You are cascading the RC network. What is going to actually happen? There is no gain that is present in the circuit, and if you cascade more and more such RC filters, right, what you are gonna get is you will see that you will be seeing the attenuation in the pass band, right? So you will be facing a heavy loss of 5 dB, 6 dB as you cascade more and more stages. But in the case of the active RC filter, you have an active circuit present, so you can use that active circuit to compensate for any loss that is gonna occur because of the RC circuits in the in the filter. Correct? Now passive filters are usually very bulky at the low frequency. What do I mean by that? So this was the point that was raised by one of the students as well. Like this L and R that we have seen, right? If you try to implement this L inductor at maybe 1 megahertz, it will take a hell lot of area on the chip, right? So your entire chip area will be just occupied by this inductor itself. Correct? So we don't usually do that. We have something called as active inductors. Correct? What does this active inductor do? So basically you use the op amp or some active circuits, and along with the op amp and the capacitance and the resistance, you try to emulate the inductor. What do I mean by emulate the inductor? Emulating the inductance means you create a circuit whose impedance raises with the frequency till certain point, right? So let's say this is my F and this is my impedance that I'm trying to draw. So if my impedance increases with the frequency, this is the function of the inductor, right? So this active circuit acts as an inductor till particular cutoff frequency, right? Till a particular frequency. Now what we make sure is that this cutoff frequency is usually much higher than the bandwidth for which the filter has been designed. And why are we doing this? Because using the active circuits and the MOSFETs and the capacitor, it is gonna save me a lot of area compared to implementing this inductor at 1 megahertz using the structures, the spiral inductor or structures that exist in the particular CMOS technology. Correct? I am saving a hell lot of area by using the active inductor. Correct? So that is why you can see though the passive filters are very bulky at low frequencies, you use the active inductors to make sure that you meet a reasonable performance, but at the same time you consume a less amount of area. The one bad point about the active filter is that we are using the op amps, so they consume, each and every op amp is gonna consume a power, and as you see that as your application demands more and more bandwidth, right, you have to burn more amount of current in the op amp to increase its unity gain bandwidth. See, you have studied the concept of the unity gain bandwidth, right? I will just give you a hint. If you just take a simple differential pair, right, its unity gain bandwidth will just come out to be Gm by CL, where Gm is nothing but the transconductance of the active circuit and the CL is nothing but the load capacitor. What you can see over here is that if you want to get a higher unity gain bandwidth, the Gm of the circuit has to be increased. To increase the GM of the circuit, you have to burn more power or you have to burn more current. Correct? So that is why I was saying that if you use the active filters and if your application demands a higher bandwidth, your power consumption is just gonna go up. Correct? The one bad point about the using the active inductors is that since you are using the op amps now, correct, if your signal is very large, then what actually happens is whatever amplifiers we study, those are small signal amplifiers. If your amplifier sees a very large signal like this, your amplifier is gonna introduce a non-linearity that will create a distortion, right? I don't want this distortion to be there. Correct? So your active filter has to have a sufficient dynamic range that it can handle a large signal like this, right? The inductor, the passive LC filter doesn't have to do that, right? Passive filter does not, their values do not change with the signal level, correct? So I don't have to worry about how big the signal I am giving to this filter. But if I'm using the active filter, I have to worry about the peak to peak voltage of the signal that I am giving as an input to my active RC filter, right? And so now the one last point is implementation becomes challenging after 100 megahertz filter bandwidth due to the restrictions on the op amp design. And why these restrictions are there, let me just tell you the point. See, you are designing a filter, let's say at 200 megahertz, correct? So if you look at the active RC circuit that we have seen, right, see the cutoff, the response of this filter, right, the 3 dB, if you just try to see the response, right, this is around 200 megahertz. If this circuit's 3 dB bandwidth has to be 200 megahertz, the 3 dB bandwidth of this op amp has to be at least 4 or 5x of this 200 megahertz. Because I want my op amp to be acting as an ideal. See, what was the main assumption when we designed this active RC circuits? My op amp is ideal. What does the ideal op amp has? Infinite bandwidth, infinite gain. Correct? Now if you limit the bandwidth of the op amp, if you want to design the filter at 200 megahertz, but your op amp's 3 dB bandwidth itself is 200 megahertz, the op amp is not ideal anymore. Correct? It will have trouble it will have trouble means you will have trouble in finding out the transfer function of this entire circuit by assuming a op amp like a naught upon 1 plus s by omega naught. It will become heavily complicated, right? So now I want my op amp to be very very fast. I want it to be active. I don't want it to be limited. I don't want to be speed limited. So what I have to do, whatever frequency 3 dB frequency of the filter that I want to design, always have a op amp whose 3 dB bandwidth will be at least 4x or 5x of that frequency. Correct? Someone was asking me how do we get the specs on this op amp. Correct? This is how you get the spec on the op amp. Correct? So you will, from the filters application, the filters 3 dB cutoff application, you will be at least getting a spec on the 3 dB or the unity gain bandwidth of this op amp. And then when you give this spec of the UGBW of this op amp, you give this circuit to your analog designer who will be working under you, and you tell him that design the op amp for me. Correct? Having a spec of UGBW like this. Correct? So just connect the dots. Don't just think why we give you the circuit to design the two-stage op amp which have a certain spec of UGBW, maybe like 1 gigahertz or something like that. Correct? There has to be a practical application which demanded the UGBW to be at least having this particular value. Correct? I hope this particular part is clear and you are able to relate everything. Now let's see the practical case studies. So now just a quick recap. I hope you remember this from our first class, right? How the entire architecture looks like. So you have the power amplifiers, the LNAs and the RF filters to be near the antenna over here, and the filters that we studied, those are present after the down conversion. This is where we actually operate. Correct? So whatever filters, active RC filter, passive RC filter, whatever we studied, so they actually occur in this particular part of the transceiver. Correct? So now let's try to see how people have implemented these filters. Correct? So now let's look at the transactions on microwave theory and techniques paper from IIT Bombay group. A compact reconfigurable CMOS RF receiver for NAVIC, GPS, Galileo and Beidou. Even if you don't understand anything, I suppose that you understand what is this GPS. Right? So they are making a GPS receiver for your maybe cellular phone or something, right? And they want to make it a reconfigurable. Why reconfigurable? Because this receiver not only performs the function for the GPS, but it also performs the function for the Galileo, Beidou and NAVIC, right? This is the Indian navigation Indian constellation, right? So now if you want to study deep into what is this Beidou, Galileo, just ask ChatGPT or Google. I don't want to go very much into depth of this particular thing. What I just want you to tell is just look at the GPS. There are different bandwidths available at different carrier frequencies, right? So now if I want to operate with different bandwidth, what I have to do, whatever filter structures that you have seen over here, correct? So their 3 dB cutoff that you are seeing, this 200 megahertz, it has to be made tunable somehow. Correct? This filter bandwidth has to be tunable. So how can I change the bandwidth of my filter? My resistors that you are seeing over here, these have to be tunable now. Unless and until these resistor capacitors are tunable, I cannot tune the 3 dB bandwidth of my filter. Correct? So that is why if you go into and look into the circuit details, right? Again, you can relate it. This is my LNA, this is my mixer, and these are my baseband filters. Correct? So this is a structure that they have represented over here. Right? Now, if you compare this structure, that is why you have. So what they have done, they have not modified the resistors over here. They have modified just the capacitor because varactors are very easy to implement in the CMOS technology. So now, if you try to compare this with what we have studied, right? This is my tau Thomas bicord. If you try to look, right, there was a network of RC that was present. There was just the network of C that was present over here. Again, if you look, there is a network of RC, parallel RC, and there is just the network of C that is present over here. And you have a feedback from the last stage to the first stage through some resistor. Correct? So you have some feedback from the last stage to the first stage through resistor. Correct? Now, this was just one stage. This was just one thing. Again, they have done this. This was just one of the stages that I just told you. Correct? So now, if you see the way they have designed the filter. So this was their first stage, correct, and now this was their second stage, correct. So this second stage you can easily identify as a Tau Thomas bicorde. You can easily identify it to be a Tau Thomas bicorde, right? So now if this is a Tau Thomas bicorde, now what do we expect? We had said that we calculated that this is a band pass filter circuit, right? Now just look what is the response of this circuit. Third order complex band pass IQ filter, correct. So I'm not saying you just go and derive the transfer function of this. I just want you to understand that whatever sums are there in your assignment, whatever sir is teaching you, it has some practical application. None of the things exist for a nonsense reasons, right? Each and every one of thing has some practical application. It is just that you are at a very early stage and you have not been exposed to all these things that are going on in the world of research, right? So these things are still being used. Just try to relate at least in a very basic manner to what we are doing over here, correct. Now again you can see, since they have had to have a configurable bandwidth, they are just showing the response, correct, of that particular part is clear. Now let's go on to the next paper. Again in the transactions and microwave theory and techniques, a 24 gigahertz 4 transmitter 4 receiver phased array transceiver with automatic beam steering mode for FMCW radar applications. Even if you don't understand anything, that is completely okay. Just understand that there are 4 transmitters, correct, and 4 receivers that are present in this circuits. That's it, correct. And if you zoom into one of the receiving circuits, what you will be able to find, there is a mixer. It is pumping current. So since I have to pump current, right, you must have been familiar by now what is the transimpedance amplifier, right? It is nothing but the current controlled voltage source. It takes the current as an input and gives you voltage at the output. So since this mixer is basically implemented in the current mode, that means outputs are current. It injects the current into the circuit, and I need an amplifier which can take the current as an input and give you the voltage as the output. Just like we have seen for the case of the data center transimpedance amplifier, right? When we were talking about the process variations, right? We have seen the TIA circuit, right? There was a current source. We said that this was nothing but the photodiode, correct? And then you had a arrangement of the op-amp, right? You had a feedback resistor RF over here. You have a VO, and basically this was connected to like this, correct. So you can, this TIA, you can similarly consider that this TIA is exactly doing the same job. Now this feedback paths that you are seeing over here, just ignore them. These are for something called as the DC offset cancellation. I don't want to go in that particular domain. It will become very, very complex, correct. So now just identify the structure. You have a resistor, correct. You have a resistor and you have one C and one R that is present. You have one C and one R that is present. Now we have seen this circuit. We have calculated the gain of the circuit. What was the transfer function? Minus R2 by R1, 1 upon 1 plus SCR2, correct. So this is the gain. And again, just see what they have written, a low pass filter. What did we get? Again, this was a low pass filter, correct. So I hope at least you are able to appreciate the importance of whatever sums you have solved today and the practical applications and where they are actually going, correct. So now I just don't want to go into the details of this. Let me just go into the next thing. That is the paper in the Journal of Solid State Circuits, correct. A 65 nanometers CMOS 2x2 MIMO multiband LTE RF transceiver for small cell base stations, correct. So basically they are designing the transceiver for the 4G base stations that are there around you, correct. Now again I'm just taking the receiver chain, the baseband chain, correct. Again you can see a transimpedance amplifier is there, correct, and some kind of feedback path is there, correct. I again just don't consider it, correct. Again I won't go into the details of it, like how it is gonna give you the band pass filter response that you want. You can have a look into it. Just put s equal to 0 and s equal to infinity and just verify yourself that this indeed gives you the band pass filter response. Now what I am interested in is just see they have used a 5th order filter. They have used a 5th order filter. This was a communication application, right? But if I look at the radar application, right, this is the FMCW radar application, right? They have just used the second stage filter. Now why is it that we are using such a higher order filter for the communication and we are using a lower order filter for the radar? So now to appreciate the importance for that, you just have to go into this around 850 megahertz band that is present in the cellular, and just check the channel bandwidths that are available, 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz. So what do I mean by that? If you take a particular channel, right? For example, if you take any particular channel, let's say f0, so you have around, let's say, a 10 megahertz of bandwidth around it, correct? Very adjacent to it there is one more channel, correct, which is just at a, what you can say, which is just at a 10 megahertz difference. So let me denote it as f1, correct? So what you are going to do, this signal will be coming down, you will be down converting this signal, right? And this signal will now again look something like this, correct? It will again look something like this. The problem is, let me just change the color of my pen. Yeah. So the problem is, if you don't have a sharp filter, correct, what you are gonna have is some, see, this is the channel where other user is operating. This is my own channel, my channel. Why do I want to process the information that is present on the other user's channel, right? It will just corrupt my, if I'm trying to speak with some other person, it will just corrupt my call, right? I will be able to hear the what other person is saying to some different person, right? That is a crosstalk that I don't want to happen. So now what you can see, if I have a very low order filter, some of this information will, I am also gonna process it. But if I have, let me just change the color of the pen. But if I have a filter which has a very sharp response like this, correct, none of this information is gonna come into my pass band, right? So all of this interferer will be heavily attenuated, correct? So that is why you can see that from your pass band you want at least around 53 dB of rejection at just 10 megahertz frequency. How can you get such a high rejection at just 10 megahertz of offset? See, when you use the first order filter, I'm just talking about the LPF, you get 20 dB per decade kind of slope. What does this mean? If you are operating at 1 megahertz, let's say this is U, correct? If you move to 10 megahertz, you will be getting a 20 dB attenuation for whatever kachra is there in that particular spectrum. Now if you move to fifth order filter, fifth order LPF, now this slope will increase to what? 100 dB per decade. Now if you are operating at 1 megahertz, right, and let's say there is some kachra present at 10 megahertz, now that will be getting attenuated by 100 dB, right? This is very huge. So what we can see from here is that if you want a very good rejection, very stringent requirement on the rejection at a particular offset frequency which is very near to your pass band, you need filters which have very high order. And what do you compromise for getting a higher order filter? You are gonna use more and more op amps, so you are gonna consume a more and more amount of power. The more and more filters you have, also at the same time, since these op amps, if you have a very large signal, right, these op amps can go into the non-linear mode, and they can also create a non-linearity at the output, so you may get some spurious frequency components at the output as well, correct? So this is the price you pay when you operate at the communication, when you are using the communication transceiver. You have to have a very sharp cutoff filter, and that's why you need to have fifth, sixth, or sometimes even seventh or eighth order filter. So don't get surprised if you see 8th or 10th order filter written in the research paper. Just remember that there is a need for it, and how do you understand the need for it? Just look at the image that I have taken from the Wikipedia. You will be able to understand that the channel bandwidth is just 10 megahertz, correct? Now let me go on to the very advanced application. From this paper has been taken from the Journal of Solid State Circuit. A 28 gigahertz, this is the millimeter wave band for your 5G application. So a 28 gigahertz CMOS direct conversion transceiver with packaged 2x4 antenna array for 5G cellular system. Even if you don't understand this term 2x4 antenna array and all the what is this package, it's completely okay. We don't expect you to know all this stuff right now. Correct? What I just want you to show is that just look at the bandwidth that is available in this particular band, 400 mega, right? This is absolutely crazy. 100 megahertz, 200 megahertz, 400 megahertz. And what did I tell you? What does this mean? So that means around a particular carrier, this bandwidth that you are seeing over here, this is around 200 megahertz. And now when you once this signal passes through the LNA, correct? Once this signal passes through the LNA, passes through the mixer, somebody has to process this signal, right? Now this baseband amplifier and the cutoff filter that I have over here, correct? It should be capable enough of handling this 200 megahertz of bandwidth. So if my information is just lying in the 200 megahertz range, I just have to make sure that my at 3 dB frequency, it is at least greater than or equal to this 200 megahertz. Correct? And what did we see for making the baseband amplifiers, which has the not baseband amplifier, the active filters having the bandwidth greater than or equal to 200 megahertz? It is going to be challenging because your 3 dB bandwidth of your op-amp has to be at least 4x or 5x of that, and your op-amps are gonna consume a lot higher power, right? Why a lot higher power? Because we have seen UGBW is nothing but GM by CL. If you want to increase the UGBW by 4x 5x, your current consumption has to go up by that much factor, and if your current consumption has to go up by that much factor, that means you are gonna consume a hell lot of power now. Correct? So I hope you appreciate the importance of all this stuff, and why are we studying the active RC filter, why that question was given to you in the assignment number 2, why you were asked to calculate the sensitivity, and why you were made to solve the numericals on the tolerances, right? Each and everything has a particular application. It is just that you have not been exposed to the field. So thanks a lot guys, and really sorry that I had some delay in uploading this recording. The last week was completely crazy for me, and for the next 14 days also I'm gonna be very busy. So hopefully the next recording happens without any disruption, so that you guys will get the access to the complete recording within 48 hours. So thanks a lot guys, take care, have a great day, bye bye.